Okay, this is Julia Carloson interviewing Lockey Lawson on March 17th, 2014 at her home in Decatur, Georgia. So, Lockey, tell us a little bit about your childhood. You grew up in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Very interesting. I was the youngest of four sisters.
Mm-hmm.
The two older sisters were quite a bit older, like 18 years and 15.
Okay.
And Georgia was close to my age. She was about 6 years older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm whistling.
It's okay.
I haven't done that before. Maybe I got my hearing aids fixed good. I was the youngest of four children,
Yeah.
four girls.
Yes.
And I sort of grew up alone because my sisters were older.
Yeah.
But I had some friends. And you haven't been to our old home, and yeah, Tom went with us, I think. But the home is still there.
Oh, okay.
Marion bought it, and
Marion is?
my nephew,
Okay.
my oldest nephew.
Okay.
He's dead now.
Mm-hmm.
He died this past year. And my sister was a greedy person, and she wanted everything for him, not her other children.
Oh, okay.
One of those. And I have a picture of us when I grew up with him, with my nieces and nephews.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a picture of us when he was just beginning to stand and walk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about 5 years older than he is. I'm now at the age of 5. And it's a cute picture. But
hold on.
For any setup or anything, or are you good?
Okay. This is part 2 of interview with Lockey Lawson by Julia Carloson on March 17th, 2014. So you were the youngest of 4 sisters. Mm-hmm. What did your parents do?
Dad was basically a farmer. He did a lot of different things. He was into politics. He loved politics. That was a great challenge to him. And he was a tax lister for years. Mm-hmm. And I'm lisping.
It's okay. What about your mom?
She was strictly a housekeeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you said that you enjoyed going to the libraries when you were little, so...
Yeah, my parents started me. Dad was very interested in education.
Uh-huh.
And he had been a justice of the peace, and he was into politics, and he knew a lot of the state politicians. Mm-hmm. And so when I can remember as a kid, when elections were coming up, he, the phone calls going back and forth, and he was, he worked in politics. I worked with him one year, and that was fun. I enjoyed it.
So, what was the library like that you went to as a child?
It was a small library in the, what they call City Hall then.
Okay.
And, of course, that's an abandoned, no, it's not abandoned, they use it for different things, but the library was in the hall there, and in the building. Mm-hmm. And I was going to the library.
Go on.
When I was about 6. And the librarians knew me, and they knew what kind of books I liked.
Okay.
I would go home just with a load of books. And I would read all of them.
So what were your favorite books?
Oh, I loved ones about animals and I had one favorite author that I read everything he wrote.
Uh-huh.
I had some of the books
Mm-hmm.
that I had I just loved them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when I got married and left, some of my relatives cleaned out my stuff, just stole it,
Oh.
which made me unhappy.
How old were you when you got married?
28.
So that was late for that time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so where did you move then?
We lived in Black Mountain just a short while.
Okay.
And then we moved to Burlington, North Carolina.
Okay.
I got a job there.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it a library job?
no, I worked in a tax office.
Oh, okay. All right.
In Greensboro,
Okay.
which is the central place in North Carolina for that type of things. And I was interested, in different things.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really settled on because I had graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to college, a junior college, girls' college.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally,
Yeah.
I had to go. I didn't have to, but my parents, kind of hung on to me because I'd been real unhealthy as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and dad always liked to know where I was and how I was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that must have been very annoying.
So I had plenty of attention.
Yeah.
But it was odd, because I was growing up with nieces and nephews, which was the same age.
Okay.
Just
yeah.
a few years younger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when did you get your first library job?
Let's see, that was after I came out of Monterey. My dad got it for me.
How did he get it for you?
They had a program going and the government was paying for it.
Uh-huh.
Hiring librarians and that type. And I had volunteered, when I was in school. Mm-hmm. I did volunteer work in the library, shelving books and doing that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And so when I was a librarian for 2 years in the grammar school there.
Okay, so the grammar school in
Black Mountain.
Black Mountain. Okay.
And I enjoyed it. I started a story hour for the kids. And they loved to come in, and if they had projects they were doing in class, I would help them with their reference work and pulling stuff together for them.
Okay, one moment. We're just going to pause this. Okay, so sorry about that. Please continue telling us about your experiences working in the
It was
volunteering
a lot of
in the
fun
library.
because I made a lot of the kids. Kids will, if you are friendly to them and nice and not snippy, they kind of gather with you. And so if they missed some of the pupils, they'd always check in the library to see if they were in there pretending to get information. But I was able to, one thing I enjoyed doing was they had class projects. You know how you do in a grammar school. This was grammar school through 7th grade.
Okay.
Then they left there and went to high school.
Okay.
But I enjoyed working with them then. The reference work and stuff appealed to me. I liked that. And so that was fun. And the kids volunteered to do stuff.
Oh, okay.
They wanted to learn, and I taught them as much as I knew.
So you were really a teacher, like a teacher/librarian for them in a way. Okay. Had you done any studies in librarianship?
I had some classes, yes.
Where did you take those at?
Um,
Where did you take those classes at?
They were offered by the government in Asheville.
Oh, okay.
Too.
So how many years?
I I don't know how many, if you put it down in years, but I sort of kept up with it because I was interested in that.
Yeah.
But even though I was doing other stuff, and so it came up. A job came up in Burlington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It was a government job, and was headquartered in Winston-Salem.
Okay.
But it was for the Navy.
Oh, and what year was that in?
That was what year it was in. Let's see, it was the same year that I got that job. The same year we were married. That we were married in 48.
Oh, okay, all right.
And we moved from Black Mountain to Burlington, North Carolina.
Okay. So that must have been quite a...
That was interesting.
So tell us a little bit about what you did.
They were doing, I've forgotten now the number of it, but it was back when they were building... I can't think now what it was. Some of the big machines that they had going in military.
Okay.
We were working for the military.
Okay.
I was working for Western Electric.
Western Electric.
Because they were handling contracts.
Oh, okay.
And that was interesting work. I was in charge of the office.
So.
And it was a small office. It had two old retired Navy guys. Mm-hmm. And then it had a couple of younger men.
So you were a woman in charge of all these men. Did you experience a whole lot of...
No, it was funny because there was a camaraderie between us.
Oh, okay.
You know, because we were all working for the same people.
Uh-huh.
And for the Navy out of Winston.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting in a way. It was when they were building these... I used to see the freight trains going through with the shipments on it.
Oh.
And I still can't think what it was, but of course that was back in 1948 and 49.
Okay. So, I believe also at this time you were the sole provider for your family, weren't you?
Well, Blackie was retired from the military.
Uh-huh.
As he was disabled.
Yeah.
And it was just the two of us.
Uh-huh. So, at what point did you start having kids and having to support
one?
Okay.
And I had her after we moved in 1950.
Okay.
After we were in Burlington then with Western Electric.
Oh, okay. And that would be Josie?
Josie.
Okay. So, but that must have still been rather difficult, providing for a young family and having to work at the same time. Was that very challenging?
I took 3 months leave.
Okay.
When she was born, and Blackie took care of her.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was retired and drew retirement.
Oh, okay. So, how long did you work for the Navy?
Let's see, I left. I worked there. They were moving us.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been offered a job. I was offered a job in Washington, D.C.
So how long had you been working in Burlington before getting the job in Washington, D.C.?
I had been working, let's see, I went to Burlington in 49.
Okay.
And I was there about 2 years.
Okay. One moment, we're just going to pause. Okay, we are starting again. So, yeah, you were telling us about when you were getting the job in Washington.
Yeah. They interviewed me. But
Mm-hmm.
by phone, I got a letter.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote back that I was interested.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, Blackie was free to go, wherever I went.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of fun because Jody was small then.
Uh-huh.
And she was about 2. Blackie went ahead to Washington and got us an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And Josie and I followed we just shipped some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of a lot of my stuff was appropriated without my permission.
Oh.
They got into it and took it. Grace's family was really bad about that.
And Grace is your other sister?
The oldest.
The oldest sister, okay.
And she hated that she wasn't in charge.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of ignored her. I didn't pay any attention to it. I did what my parents told me and ignored her, and that did not make her happy.
So, your job, how long of a time,
I went in as a clerk typist.
Okay.
And, let's see, I was... In a very short while, the secretary to the librarian left, and Mrs. Weed picked me to be her secretary.
And Mrs. Weed was
She was the librarian.
Oh, okay, so you went from clerk to secretary.
Yeah, you learn, they give you tests and things, too, that would show that you were capable of doing the job.
What sort of tests?
In some cases it would be written, and some it would be verbal.
Mm-hmm.
You would put in like an application of the experience you had. Mm-hmm. And I always tried to be real careful and not lie on any of that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to back up what I said.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So how long were you her secretary, the librarian secretary?
Yeah, let's see. She got married. She was 50-some years old, almost 60. She had been married before. Her husband had been married before. His wife died. Her husband died. Mm-hmm. And so they were engaged to be married. And I was very fond of her. She was a really good boss. She knew her job, and you could talk very freely to her, and I liked that.
So you became
Her
librarian?
secretary.
Did you become librarian after she left, or?
It sort of evolved, yes.
Oh, okay.
Because I had the qualification, I had the training, because through the years I had taken classes and had the training and the experience.
Okay.
But I started out as her secretary.
So what year would that have been?
That would have been in 1950-something.
Okay.
In the 50s.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
And so you were at post of librarian for how long? How long were you there for?
I was there till I retired.
When was that?
And I followed in 1974.
Okay. Do you recall any projects that were exciting that you had to take on during the time?
One of the exciting jobs, and Mrs. Weed often laughed about that. She had been, her husband had been in the Navy, and he, I can't remember now whether he was taken ill and died or whether he was, anyway, he was dead.
Okay.
And she didn't remarry for a long time. And she was, I just loved her. We stayed in touch after I retired. And she was married and living in Maryland, and I was retired and living in Georgia. But she was a very considerate person, which makes a difference. And she liked having me because I like people. And I read people then, I did pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 moment. Let's stop this. Okay, starting off again. So tell us, were there any specific projects that you remember that were difficult or memorable in any sort of way that you had to do when you were a librarian?
Let me think. I was eventually became, we split up. I went with the Bureau of Ordnance.
The Bureau of Ordnance.
Of the Navy. The Navy went through this big change in which we were changing our name from, instead of Bureau of Ordnance, we became Bureau of Naval Weapons.
The Bureau of Naval Weapons. Okay.
And
so you dealt with weapons.
In the books and reports and things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was interesting, though, because they came in over my desk. I was in charge of the incoming material. Okay. And you got the reports, and you scanned them to make sure that you wanted it. And you had a staff. And I was acquisitions librarian.
Okay.
You had a cataloging librarian. And you had a reference librarian. There was 3 branches.
Okay.
I was over the acquisition.
Okay.
I took care of, handled the budget.
Okay.
Ordered the reports and books. I made selections, too, like everybody else. And selecting what we were putting in the, collection.
Okay, so collection development, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we didn't have a big library as far as books were concerned. We had books, and we ordered books. But it was reports, basically, because you had reports coming in from all over.
All over the
country? Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of reports?
Reports that, maybe a military place was developing a weapon. You'd get a report on the stages it was in and what it was going through.
Oh, wow.
And you did review when the reports came in. I was in charge of all incoming mail of the secret room, that type of thing.
Oh, wow. Wow.
When you stop and think about it, you just did it, You didn't think, oh, my God, I'll never get this done.
Yeah. So you were head of acquisitions, and there was someone for reference, and then
someone for cataloging.
So, did you guys have a head librarian above you?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
She was not much of anything. She's one of the few people I worked with that I thoroughly disliked.
Oh.
And I had the pleasure of telling her off. And I never felt so good. Because usually I'd just ride even, when things would come up, I'd think, well, this will pay it. But she was a person who played favorites. She had her people. And what she tried to do was put everything off on me.
Oh.
And I started rebelling.
Oh.
I told Mr. Plant if I was going to run the place, they were going to pay me.
And Mr.
Plant at one point was
who?
the head librarian.
Oh, okay. So the head librarian changed often a lot, or the person who had the post?
We merged.
Okay.
Biblical government is great for merging. You put it all together and get it all worked out, and then you immediately split it.
Okay.
And do something else. And they did this. See, we went through the big change in 1960.
Okay.
When they put the Bureau of Naval, we became Bureau of Naval Weapons.
Uh-huh.
And they put it together the ordinance and the and we were ordinance at that point. We had I've forgotten what the other group was called, but they just, I wondered how they ever got by and did anything because they were so, they were the reference section. Mm-hmm. And God forbid they get their fingers dirty.
Okay, we're going to stop for a moment. Okay, starting off again. So tell us, were there any specific projects that you remember that were difficult or memorable in any sort of way that you had to do when you were a librarian?
Let me think. I was eventually became, we split up. I went with the Bureau of Ordnance.
The Bureau of Ordnance.
Uh-huh. Of the Navy. The Navy went through this big change in which we were changing our name from, instead of Bureau of Ordnance, we became Bureau of Naval Weapons.
The Bureau of Naval Weapons.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And
so you dealt with weapons.
In the books and reports and things. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was interesting though because they came in over my desk. I was in charge of the incoming material. Okay. And you got the reports and you scanned them to make sure that you wanted it. Mm-hmm. And you had a staff. Mm-hmm. I was acquisitions librarian. Okay. You had a cataloging librarian. Uh-huh. And you had a reference librarian. There was 3 branches. Okay. I was over the acquisition. Okay. I took care of, handled the budget. Okay. Ordered the reports and books. I made selections too, like everybody else. And selecting what we were putting in the, collection.
Okay, so collection development, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we didn't have a big library as far as books were concerned. We had books, and we ordered books. Mm-hmm. But it was reports, basically, because you had reports coming in from all over.
All over the country?
Country, yeah.
Okay. So what kind of reports?
Reports that, maybe a military's place was developing a weapon. Mm-hmm. You get a report on the stages it was in and what it was going through.
Oh, wow.
And you did review when the reports came in. I was in charge of all incoming mail of the secret room, that type of thing.
Oh, wow. Wow.
When you stop and think about it, you just did it, You didn't think, oh, my God, I'll never get this done.
Yeah. So you were head of acquisitions, and there was someone for reference, and then
someone for cataloging.
So, did you guys have a head librarian above you?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
She was not much of anything. She's one of the few people I worked with that I thoroughly disliked. Oh. And I had the pleasure of telling her off. And I never felt so good. Because usually I'd just ride even, when things would come up, I'd think, well, this is bad. But she was a person who played favorites. She had her people. And what she tried to do was put everything off on me. Oh. And I started rebelling. Oh. I told Mr. Plant if I was going to run the place, they were going to pay me.
And Mr.
Plant at one point was the head librarian.
Oh, okay. So the head librarian changed often a lot, or the person who had the post?
We merged.
Okay.
Biblical government is great for merging.
Mm-hmm.
You put it all together and get it all worked out, and then you immediately split it
Okay.
and do something else. And they did this. See, we went through the big change in 1960
Okay.
when they put the Bureau of Naval, we became Bureau of Naval Weapons, and they put it together, the ordnance, and the and we were ordnance at that point. You had, I've forgotten what the other group was called, but they just, I wondered how they ever got by and did anything, because they were so, they were the reference section, and God forbid they get their fingers dirty.
Okay, we're going to stop for a moment. Okay, so continue.
Because at the same time that you're dealing with people, trying not to offend anybody, it wasn't that I was afraid of offending people. If the cause was just,
Yeah.
but you did have to be careful.
Yeah.
And she had her own little clique of friends, and she'd, in other words, like she was in charge of the reference section. I was in charge of acquisitions, and Virginia was in charge of cataloging. And Virginia and I were good friends, which may have been she died this year, which I missed her. But anyway, Mrs. Lutz, she always had these conspiracy things. She was sure that somebody was after her, about to do her in. Rat on her or something.
Yeah.
And so they got this colored girl in.
This what?
Colored girl in.
Oh.
We were training young people because they hoped to take them and train them well, and then they could progress up the line. And she was smart as a dickens, but she hated white people. I'm obviously white, but I decided, well, I'll take her on.
Yeah.
Nobody else wanted her.
Oh wow! So was she the first? She was the first.
She was the first one of those people that they hired.
Oh, okay.
They had a special name they called them, but they were low on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And they were selected to be trained to perhaps advance.
Okay.
And
so advance into the rest of the
grade. See,
okay.
she would be like a 2, and I would take her and train her. She could become a 3 or 4 or 5. Go up the ladder as years passed.
Oh, okay.
You're assuming they're going to live forever, and you're going to hire them. But anyway.
So how old was she?
I would say she was 23 or 4 probably.
Did you eventually end up hiring her?
She was working. I was the only one that would take her.
Oh, okay.
And old dummy.
Yeah.
Because I was all for giving people a chance.
Yeah.
And so I was trying really to train her. But eventually I got rid of her. And which was a surprise, because back then it was almost impossible to get rid of a colored person.
Yeah.
Because they were sure you were prejudiced.
Yeah.
I'm a Southerner.
Yeah.
Which automatically they would assume was prejudice.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. I didn't care what color they were.
Yeah. Did you experience a whole lot of other...
There was... I didn't have much trouble otherwise, but this all could have exploded into a really big case.
Yeah. Did you witness other moments in the civil rights movement?
I didn't come into contact because there was a lot of the people that were involved in that that I was friendly with because, I didn't care. people are people. And if they can be got along with, I can give it a try at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, and of course I had colored friends, which helped.
Yeah. So that still must have been an experience to go up during that time with people of color.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You had to be really careful.
Yeah, I imagine.
We landed up in the admiral's office because, she had put in a complaint to somebody because she knew one or two of the colored people who were involved, in this business. And he told Virginia later. I didn't talk to him at that point. I knew him and liked him okay. And he was black. But he told Virginia he had to fight like, he used the expression, fight like hell to keep from losing his job. Because Connie had told him.
And Connie's the admiral?
No, Connie is the black girl.
Okay.
They were going to send up the letter because she was smart. But she unfortunately hated white people.
Yeah.
Which is bad, in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And she was, because her father and mother were separated, and her father was dating a white woman.
Oh.
And so she really had, a chip on her shoulder. And I realized pretty soon, that she had a chip. But she was okay with me because I was new and she was going to charm me, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay, we'll just pause for a minute.
It's interesting, even I got an interesting thing about it. I'm kidding.
So, any other memorable instances you can recall in your...
Well, this one, we were... The funny part of it is they were going to have this meeting. Oh boy, we were going up and talk to the admiral. And the admiral, quotes. So I'm used to. Was trained as a kid, as a little kid. I was trained how to deal with older people because of my parents. And so, anyway. Everybody's all decided we were all going to meet in the admiral's office and discuss Connie.
Oh, boy.
When we got there, they wouldn't talk. And I sat there, and I thought and the admiral asked me something, and I answered. And he yacked on a while. And I finally decided, well, this is just chicken. People were chickening out. On the way up there. All of them were talking about what they were going to say. Not a person would open his mouth. And I thought, this is stupid.
So were the majority of your colleagues just not wanting to?
The admirals, for some reason, they were not used to talking to admirals.
Oh, okay.
Why was I used to talking to admirals if they weren't?
Yeah. So that must have...
I was accustomed just to talking to people. But, because, rank is rank, and I respect rank.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to be honest. And he asked me something. I've forgotten what momentous thing it was at the time.
Was it about?
But I told him, I remember telling him that he was going to have a problem in the library if he didn't, handle it.
Yeah, handle Connie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, she is to a T, everybody in there detested her.
Yeah.
And because she had been sensitive, they had tried to be nice to her. She was so nasty about it.
Yeah.
But she had been friendly to me. But after, I was her supervisor.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, after, I guess the little man that she was a friend of, the rights guy, that said he almost lost his job. He had to fight to keep it, which is sad.
Because of Connie?
Because of Connie. She got him in trouble.
Oh, wow.
She told him lies which were not true.
Okay.
And, you try to, in a case where you go before somebody like that, you try to tell the truth. Because you don't want them finding out a bunch of fibs.
So after this whole situation was dealt with, was it a long time before another person of color was hired or was taken on?
I don't.
You don't
I don't know whether anybody was hired after them or not, because it was not too long after that. Blackie had been after me to retire.
Oh, okay. So you retired in 74? Okay. And so did you guys stay in Washington, D.C. after that?
No.
Or, no, you...
Well, we had moved to Virginia, out in Virginia much earlier.
Okay.
And because the school that Josie would have had to go to the apartment that we had was very close to there. But it was an old school. It was, you could tell it was not cared for. Windows were broken. Things like that. You could tell it was a poor neighborhood school.
Okay.
And Blackie said, I just don't want Jody to go to a school like that.
Yeah.
She deserves better.
Yeah.
And so we moved out into Virginia. And they had nice schools out there with black kids and white kids. And
good libraries?
Yeah.
So did you miss your work a lot when you retired, or were you
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're used to that routine. So
did you visit the local library a lot at that point, after you had retired and you guys moved?
No.
No? No more libraries?
When I retired.
Yeah. Oh, that's understandable.
Retirement.
I will just pause for a minute here. Okay, so we will just conclude the interview, hopefully. So how long did you guys remain in Virginia?
We were, as soon as I retired, we were getting ready to move.
So, but did you move once you had moved out of Washington, D.C., and you moved to Virginia, did you move?
We lived in Virginia when I retired.
And was it a suburb of Washington, D.C., or it was? It
basically is.
Okay.
We lived like 10 miles out.
Okay.
And the buses were loaded with people.
Okay. And did you guys end up moving anywhere else after that, or? Yeah,
we moved. Blackie had been figuring out places because he wanted to find somewhere he could play golf all year.
Okay, yeah.
And he decided Augusta was the place to do it.
Okay, so you guys moved to Augusta in
1974.
Okay, and then you stayed there until?
I moved in with Jody and Skip.
And what year would that have been?
Let's see. We moved there in 74, and we lived a couple of 2 or 3 places. And moved.
But you liked Augusta?
I didn't dislike it a lot. Because it was a small city, but it's growing. And let's see, we moved in 74 there. And then we bought a house. And we didn't like that, so we bought the house that I own now.
Okay.
And I still own it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then you came to live with Josie and Skip
About 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
I came over to visit. I would come over and visit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes stay a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And because, see, I've been living alone for a long time.
Yeah, so your husband died
In 1985.
Oh, okay. So you've been alone for quite some time.
Quite some time, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what he died of?
I haven't thought about that.
Oh, it's been a while, so yeah, I can imagine you put it out of your mind.
Good grief. He was sick for off and on, but he had problems, because he was injured in service.
Mm-hmm.
And he had tic douloureux, which was a very painful facial
tick.
Mm-hmm. And after we moved to Augusta,
mm-hmm.
I had been out working in the yard, and I came in, and he'd been out working too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was lying in the kitchen. I don't know whether he fell or lay down.
Oh, so that
but he was in such pain.
Yeah.
From the tic douloureux, and it took him a long time to diagnose that.
Yeah.
So I went to the Army
mm-hmm.
Library
mm-hmm.
and got information from them
mm-hmm.
because I had started reading up on this, and I wrote to the University of Pennsylvania
mm-hmm.
because I found out that they were doing research on this.
Mm-hmm.
tic douloureux.
Oh, so that must have been helpful to be able to find information about it.
And because it was not well known at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very painful, nerve thing.
Yeah.
And, but when I thought at first he'd had a stroke or something.
Yeah.
Because he was lying in the floor holding his head, and he said,
my.
"Boy, I have such a headache."
Oh, my.
And it would get, when it would really be bothering him,
mm-hmm.
it bothered him to open his mouth, to chew, to speak to somebody, anything.
Oh, so that must have
They
been...
finally put him on a medication that's the same medication that they use for seizures.
Mm-hmm.
Because, see, it's a seizure of pain.
Yeah.
And they had it under pretty good control that way.
Mm-hmm. So then he passed away in 1985.
Yeah.
And you were pretty much by yourself until
Yeah.
you moved in with Josie and Skip in 2009.
Yeah, I lived alone.
Mm.
Except Tom lived with me about a year.
Okay, yes. So, yeah, you're not alone at that point. Okay, well...
I enjoyed it.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Lockey, and this has been very enjoyable, so thank you.
Yeah.